So let's dive into this incredible, timeless story. It's about a king, a really wise king, who was still deeply troubled by three simple questions. He honestly believed that if he could just figure out the answers, he'd be unstoppable. He would never fail at anything ever again. And these were his questions. I mean, they look pretty straightforward, right? But think about it. They get to the very heart of how we make choices every single day. The king was so obsessed with finding the answers that he promised this huge reward to anyone in his kingdom who could give him the solution. Well, as you could imagine, the call went out, and the palace was soon flooded with the smartest people in the land. You had scholars, generals, mystics, you name it. But instead of getting the clarity he was hoping for, the king just got confused. He was practically drowning in contradictory advice. Okay, so take the first question. When is the right time to act? On one side, you had advisors saying he needed to create these super detailed timetables, planning out every single hour. But then another group was like, no way, that's impossible. Life is totally unpredictable. You just have to watch closely and act when the moment feels right. And the second question, just as messy. Who are the most important people? Some argued for his counselors, the policy experts. Others insisted it was his doctors, because what good is a kingdom without your health? A third group banged the drum for the military, for security. And then you even had some people suggesting he should listen to magicians. So after hearing all of this, the king wasn't any closer to an answer. In fact, he was more lost than when he started. None of it felt right, He started to think that maybe the wisdom he was searching for wasn't going to be found in some complicated theory or a loud debate. Totally disappointed, the king decides to try something completely different. He'd heard stories about this incredibly wise hermit who lived a very simple life, all by himself deep in a forest. He thought, maybe that's it. Maybe away from all the noise of the palace, I can find what I'm looking for. And get this, he doesn't show up with the whole royal parade. He takes off his fancy robes, puts on the clothes of a regular person, and travels to the forest completely alone. He was looking for wisdom, not as a king demanding answers, but just as a man searching for truth. So the king finally finds the hermit, who's this frail old man just digging in his little garden. The king walks up, respectfully asks his three questions, and nothing. The hermit doesn't even look up. He just keeps digging. The only answer the king got was silence. The king waited for a bit, but he could see the old man was getting really tired. So, without even thinking about it, the king just offered to help. He took the spade from the hermit and started digging the garden beds himself. And this one small act of kindness, well, it changed everything. So the king digs and digs for hours. The sun is starting to go down, and honestly, he's getting a little frustrated. He's about to ask his questions just one more time, but right at that moment, the quiet of the forest is just shattered. Out of nowhere, a man comes stumbling out from between the trees. He's clutching his stomach, bleeding from a massive wound, and he just collapses right there in front of them. Suddenly, the king's search for abstract answers is interrupted by a very real life-and-death emergency. And in that instant, the king didn't hesitate for a second. His questions, his frustration, all of it just vanished. His entire focus was on this wounded man. He cleaned and bandaged the wound as best he could, carried the man into the hermit's little hut, and then stayed with him the entire night, making sure he was okay. The next morning, the man wakes up, and he is just overwhelmed with shame. He confesses everything. He was the king's sworn enemy, and he had come to the forest to ambush and assassinate him. But the king's guards had found him first and wounded him. The very man he came to murder was the one who had just saved his life. So with his enemy now a devoted friend, the king goes back outside to find the hermit. He's determined to get an answer to his questions before he leaves. But the hermit just smiles at him and says that the questions, they've already been answered. The hermit explains that the answers weren't some secret formula. They were in the king's own actions. The most important time? It was when he was digging, because that act of kindness saved his life from the ambush. And it was when he was caring for the wounded man, because that turned a mortal enemy into a friend. The most important person? Whoever is right there with you. And the most important thing to do good for that person.
What the hermit was really teaching is what we now call mindfulness. It's not just about being calm or meditating, it's this deep understanding that the present moment, right here, right now, is the only time you have any real power. The past is just a memory, the future is just an idea. Your power to choose, to act, to help, it only exists now. The hermit's wisdom really just boils down to this one beautifully simple truth. The king was out there looking for some complex strategy for success, but the real answer was so much closer. The right time is always now. The most important person is the one you are with, and the most important thing to do is to do that person good. And this whole story leaves us with a pretty powerful question for our own lives, doesn't it? We spend so much of our energy worrying about the past and planning for the future. But what if the deepest wisdom is found just by responding to the person right in front of us and the needs of this very moment? If that's true, how might that change the very next choice you make?